Do we have history in the making? Maybe. Geraldus Bertus, who won Cocodona 250, just won Tahoe 200. He's also signed up for Bigfoot and Moab, so he's going for the Grand Slam. Mike McKnight's going for the Grand Slam. I think Eli Webby's going for the Grand Slam, where you do 4 200s from about May to October. And Harry, he has won the first 2, so maybe he can win all of them. Wouldn't that be crazy? Okay, that's your news snippet for today. I'm your host, Jeff Garmeyer. Welcome into the Free Outside Podcast. We have a great show today. I am doing my first in-person interview. Well, actually, I already did it, so I know how it turned out. Audio was average, but I think you're going to like it. It's with Cal Schwartzentruber. I think I nailed that. He says it for us immediately after we start. So, thanks for joining us. Let's dive into the podcast where we just talk about anything we want to and have a good time and start building our cult. So welcome. Thanks again. Let's get this thing going. I bought that at a Walmart. It's one of those, like, I think it actually used to play a sound, but it's like a little kid microphone, and then I drilled a hole through it and then ran like a professional grade microphone I had through it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It immediately disarms people because it's like, here's your pink microphone.
It's lighter than I thought it'd be, I guess, without the battery.
Yeah, there's
just a mix of plastic.
Yeah, it's plastic with just a wire running through it.
That's awesome.
I think I bought it at just a Walmart on the way to Silverton one year, and then just walked around on the street. My friend filmed, and I just interviewed people. They said the funniest things because they didn't even think it was a real microphone. So first off, how do you say your last name?
Swartzentruber.
Okay.
No silent letters. It's just how it's spelled. It's just long, so it's intimidating.
Exactly.
But it's actually really straightforward.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things you look at and you're like, could probably try it, but I just did it wrong.
Fair.
Yeah. And how did you get into thru-hiking?
I guess kind of the same way anyone does. You get to a point where, especially, younger people, you get to a point where you have to decide what you want to do with your time, and it's not laid out for you. And I was sick of the places that I was and wanted to get out and do something adventurous and new for me and push myself and try new things. And COVID pushed that back a couple of years, but
okay,
it all worked out in the end.
Yeah. What did you start with? What trail?
Well, in 2019, I did the Sheltoy Trace in Kentucky.
Okay. Your home trail.
My home trail. I had attempted it in 2017. It was like my first time doing more than one night doing anything.
Yep.
And I was like a broke college student with zero gear and a little bit of time. So I just wanted to try, and it did not work out well. Weather and timing, and had no skills or comfortability in that environment, and didn't work out. So while I was in school...
How long did you last on that first attempt?
I was 90 miles.
Okay.
5 days.
Respectable.
Yeah, I figured out. I mean, you just walk, and I think I have a high tolerance for discomfort, so I just kept walking. But definitely not doing it the way that I do things now. I mean, I've learned so much since then, of course, being an absolute beginner. Realized, I mean, it was a pretty shitty experience overall, but like I had a great time.
Yeah.
So wanted to actually prove to myself that I could do it. So 2 years later, I was able to do the full thing, the Sheltoy Trace, which a lot of people don't know a ton about, but that's like where I've spent a lot of time. Not one super known to the thru-hiking community or the ultra running community or the FKT community or really anyone. If you're not
still a traditional scenic trail.
It's a national recreation trail.
Oh.
Lower bar.
Okay.
I don't talk shit about my home trail, but it's definitely not a national scenic trail. Probably has less road walking than some of the national scenic trails, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. And so you did it once, and then you went back and set the unsported record on it?
Yeah. I guess 2 years ago now. It's 2024. two years back. So October of 22. I'd done the PCT that year, and that was like my first time in the thru-hiking community. Before that, I did the Sheltoy Trace, moved to Utah. I did the Wonderland Trail, and I did the UNA High Line during COVID because I wanted to be able to do something, but never really had any kind of community or a broader understanding of like what all this stuff is beyond just, watching YouTube videos and doing stuff on my own and just trial and error, figuring things out. And so when I was on the PCT, I realized I was just looking at like what the times were for the Sheltoy Trace, and I was like, well, wouldn't that be something if I it's kind of was surprising to me that I was doing miles on the PCT, and I was like, oh well, I could probably do that. I could probably just do that. So I did.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's similar to sort of how I even found out about FKTs too, was on another thru hike. You hear about them.
Yeah.
Start researching them, kill your phone battery. And then it's like, well, I guess I could just like go do this.
Yeah.
You learn how to do them super cheap too, compared to nature runners going out.
Which, I had heard of FKTs before. I knew what they were. I'd been on the site before. But I didn't know my own abilities until I was on the PCT, and I was like, oh, like this is something that could realistically happen. And and I also met people who had knowledge or experience doing that stuff that I could bounce things off of and get tips from and everything else. Ella Raff was attempting a PCT FKT that year, and after she decided it wasn't in the cards for her to do the whole thing, she still was hiking on the PCT for a while, and was a friend of a friend, so ended up meeting her a couple times during that thru hike, and it was cool seeing her because she later went back and did the self-supported Women's for Washington.
Yeah.
And it was cool after having talked to her some about FKTs and being like, oh, maybe I want to do this. In Washington, seeing her come the other way, like at the very end of her attempt, like totally, like her clothes were all torn, and she was like in the 60 miles out, from the end, like in the thick of it, and just to see her go by and be like, oh, do I really want to do this stuff? I don't know, but like it's pretty fucking badass, so I'm gonna try.
Was it already in your mind at that point you were gonna do the okay, so you had the thought, and then you saw what happens when you do it, and then you sort of had your similar push at the end.
I mean, it's one thing to like talk to people about it and read and watch videos about it and plan for something like that, and then it's another thing to actually do it. Like there's so much you can only learn by doing it yourself, and especially the very solo part of it, which I was very comfortable solo backpacking at that point, having solo backpacked that exact trail a few years prior.
Yeah.
But being alone when you're at those low moments, and also the sleep deprivation being mixed in, something I had absolutely no experience with whatsoever before. It was like a big question mark on how's this part of this going to go. And at the end, I mean, it was a 7.5 day effort, like 7 days, 11 hours, some change. And, like 5 or 6 days in, I was like, I mean, this is my first time attempting something like that. And it was 5 or 6 days in, I was not doing well, like with the mental aspect and the sleep deprivation. And I ended up getting stress fractures in both of my feet. So like I was in a lot of pain, and I was like contemplating like what I wanted to do about it. My mileage dropped significantly. Didn't really know how to handle myself in that setting because I just hadn't done it before. And when I was on night 6, I was looking at the mileage and looking at what was left and realized, okay, I either get up and do this last push through the night and finish, or I go home, because something's going to have to break. And if I keep going this way, I'm not going to get the FKT. So why am I putting myself through all of this awful whatever?
How many miles out are you when you start going through this?
When I that last night that I got to sleep, I woke up, and according to Far Out, it was 87.3 to the end.
So your thought is, I have to push through 87 miles, or I should just go home.
Yeah.
After already doing, like, what, 240 miles or?
Yeah, 250, 240, something like that. But it's the kind of, like, I knew if I went home, if I didn't see it through to the end, I was just going to have to come back.
Yeah.
Because now I had done 6 days of that, and I knew, okay, like, I made a lot of mistakes in the whole learning. You try to learn, and I made a lot of mistakes. So I knew that, like, I went home, then I would just be home being like, okay, got to try this again. And next time I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and whatever. And I would just be back. And so it didn't make sense to me to do that when there was still even a remote possibility of me just doing it then. Because at that point too, I did not want to do that whole 6 days again. No way. I was like, why did I even, want to try for an FKT like this? Why am I putting myself through this? I don't want to ever do this again. If I go home now, I'm going to have to do it again. And if I finish, I don't have to do it again. So
yeah, compared to, like, Jason Wishy's done it like 3 times now.
Yeah, which is nuts. Huge respect to him, by the way, for,
once again.
Yeah, geez. It was only a matter of time. He was, no one has as much of this kind of experience on that trail as he does. So.
Oh yeah, he knows it inside and out. I actually coached him for the.
I heard.
Year. Yeah, so it's pretty funny that it was like, this is the A goal again, same one. Okay.
Well, to me, to a lot of people, that sounds crazy to put yourself through that on the same trail time after time after time. But now, having done an FKT on that trail, it's my home trail. I have a connection to it. Like, this is where I learned to backpack. This is where, I grew up nearby. I would go to the Red for, whatever. And like, I know the area, and I have a connection to it. So I can understand, like, when you do it once, and so many people who've done FKTs say this, that they can look back and go, oh, well, I should have done this different or this different.
Yeah.
My time could have been faster. I could have done this faster. Like, I think that's just kind of the nature of people who do these kinds of things. There's always that, you just got a fucking record on something, but you're like, well, actually, it's not actually that great of a record, and I could have done it better, and all these things. And so I can definitely understand being like, okay, well, next time when I go back, I'm going to change these things, and we're going to go faster. And then next time we're going to go faster, and we're going to do this different, or all of that. So I definitely understand it, even though, I'm certainly not going to do it.
Okay, I was wondering where that was leading.
No. Well, never say never. I changed my mind at the drop of a hat, but
yeah. So at the start of your first FKT, knowing it's like over 7 days, what are you thinking when you start that thing? It's so hard to start from mile 0 on those, and knowing how hard to push that is.
Especially with, unsupported, like, heavy pack. I think mainly I was just happy to still be at that point. Like, I was feeling good. So, like, I was just happy to be there.
Yeah.
And happy to be, like, one of the really cool things for me about just getting back to the northern terminus was that's my home trail. That's where I learned. That was my first through hike. And now, like, only 3 years later from when I'd first completed it, in that time I had gained so many more skills and so many more experiences, done the PCT, and found this thing that I love. And it was a really cool experience overall, but especially at the beginning, to be able to come back and see myself in the same spot that I was years ago when I tried and failed with my shitty gear, you know, like standing in that same place with the gear and the supplies and the intention to set a record, like it was just a really kind of like reflective, cool moment.
Okay. I like that, the connection. That's like what I had at the start of the John Muir Trail. Is like the Sierras is really where I grew up, from being like 20 years old to having to like figure things out on my own. And it was like a really empowering thing. And it's like, now I'm standing here trying for this record that I thought was insane. So it is a really cool thing. And it adds this other level of motivation in an FKT when you have that through connection, whereas someone from somewhere else travels out there, they don't have that same connection.
No, yeah. And it was cool too, redoing a trail. I'd never redone a trail, and redoing it in a very different way than the first time, but still seeing all the same places and remembering. And okay. It was a cool start that devolved at some point, but at the beginning I was feeling really good.
Yeah. I've met very few people probably who've tackled 7+ days of unsupported, and I did that on the Colorado Trail. So how did you go about planning it? Because I don't think there's a perfect way or a good of a way to do it.
No.
It's gonna suck.
yeah. Well, it's so tricky, and especially because, I mean, the main thing on an unsupported effort like that is the food.
Yeah.
And food is so specific to the individual athlete. Like even like, you know, thru-hikers have, you know, you open however many thru-hikers packs, and a lot of the food, some of it might overlap, but a lot of it is not gonna, and people, you know, and also having not done an FKT before, and not even like, I ran cross country in high school, but like, I'm not an ultra runner. So I don't know like the nutritional stuff. I don't know. That was a big, that's where Ella Raff was really helpful. And I was asking her questions, and just essentially guessing and winging it. And the food was probably the trickiest part. And I still don't have a handle on that. I ended the Sheltoe FKT with like 6 or 7 pounds of food left.
Oh my God. But so, you know, 2 or 3 more days.
Yeah. Well, it could have been.
Yeah. Our food at least.
And I definitely still have not gotten that figured out. That's still, you know, a big question for me for when I inevitably, not that I have any plans right now, when I inevitably try to do something like this again. It's still the biggest question in my mind of like, I don't have that part figured out at all, which is the worst thing to not have figured out when you're doing an unsupported effort. And you have to carry it the whole way.
You have to figure it out before you start.
There's
no supplementing.
Yeah, you can't get out there and then make decisions on the fly. Like, the decisions are made. You have what you have.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to err on the side of too much versus too little, because I just absolutely did not want to run into the situation where I was rationing anything.
Yep.
And I just didn't know where that line was going to be. You know, ideally I would know exactly where that line is, and I would.
But it's the same thing as the first experience on the Sheltoe, where 90 miles is amazing for a first backpacking trip, but you don't know anything to build off of. Like, in an FKT unsupported that long, you need like some experience to even adjust your mind.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Did you portion out each day? That's one thing I did.
I did. Mainly because I wanted, again, trying to prevent the rationing thing happening later. If it's portioned out ahead of time, I can much more easily do keep things efficient at camp and transfer the day over quickly, so that I just, boom, there's your next day. It's all you're going to need until you get to camp, you know. Yeah. And I could also prevent, have a clear line of, when this amount of food is done, I'm breaking into the next day.
Yeah.
The first couple days I did eat everything, and then it just became harder and harder to get anything down, and hence why I ended up with so much food at the end.
Yeah, this thing I did on the Colorado Trail was I would trade things from today to tomorrow. I want something salty, so I'll trade this bar for something salty tomorrow for the same calories. Did you do that kind of thing?
I don't think I did. I was pretty disciplined.
Okay.
I think, well, one thing I was realizing and running into is like the further I went, the harder it was to eat and to keep down anything solid. And all I had was solid food.
Yeah.
Like, it was thru-hiker food.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you just set out the PCT, so that was probably going to be what you were used to.
Yeah. Like I wasn't going to try a bunch of new stuff on an attempt like this. I was going to stick with what I knew.
Yeah.
What was it?
Oh, did you like trade food or how like?
Oh yeah,
makeup that kind.
Yeah, no, I kept pretty disciplined with it. Because I knew I would be I want the same foods every time.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to be pushing the foods I don't want to tomorrow. And then if I eat all the good foods early on, then it'll be even harder in future days to get any calories down because it'll be stuff I just absolutely do not want to eat. So I was trying to look out for my future self and leave things that I'd want to eat because I just, at a certain point, it's like, okay, whatever I can get down, I need to be getting down.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is or what day it's from in my pack. If I can eat it, it needs to.
Yeah.
Once I need to.
You had so many extra, you were just like anything.
Yeah, exactly. Which was nice because then I ended with extra food and it was all the food I did want to eat.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know for next time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I didn't really learn my lesson because the next FKT I did, I also ended with a bunch of extra food.
Okay.
Again. So.
Yeah. Why did you decide to go after the AT through Pennsylvania? Was there any same calling or connection?
No. Not in the slightest. Totally opposite in that regard. And so this year I did the AT, and as part of my thru hike, I did Pennsylvania unsupported FKT, and it was cow. So
you starting Pennsylvania, you're like switching to FKT mode, and then you're like back to thru hiker mode.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. No, I had no plans to do it when I started the AT.
Wow.
But I figured, like I said, I'm not an ultra runner. In normal life, I'm not like super disciplined or on top of staying in shape and all that. Like I think in the future that might change. Like we'll see what happens. I don't really know, but I knew that, like, okay, I'm doing the AT. I'm gonna be in this shape again. Like, I should try for something else.
Yeah,
I should push myself again because I didn't want the Sheltoy to be a one-off thing, especially because I mean, I'm just falling into the stereotype of the person I mentioned earlier, but I could have done it faster. So I really I wanted to prove to myself that I learned some things from the previous effort and apply it to something new and in a new environment, and I was realizing, like, when I was on the AT, I was looking at different trails, FKTs,
okay.
And
so you're hooked.
So yeah, so I was like, which one might I want to attempt? And I was just thinking, like, I don't want to ending the PCT and then having 2 weeks off and then doing the Sheltoy FKT was a lot more manageable in my mind than ending the AT and on a much shorter time window, immediately flipping over into an FKT.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I just anticipated my body being in worse shape at the end of the AT and did not have any kind of buffer. I would have to go straight from the AT to FKT and didn't want to do that, but I didn't want to just throw away my AT legs, So,
yeah.
In New Hampshire, I was like, oh, well, what if I did one of the states or whatever? And then I was like looking at the times, and Pennsylvania was in the range of like distance that I thought I wanted to do, and had a time I thought I could get. And also having never hiked in Pennsylvania before, only having like heard people talk about it, it seemed like people hated it. So double bonus of one, I get through the one people hate fast, and two, I get like speed record on the one that everyone hates.
It's the most painful state.
Yeah. So two pluses there for Pennsylvania. So and then in the Mid-Atlantic, I just got kind of bored, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll throw a little bit of bigger mile day training in there and make the logistical preparations. And then when I got to Pennsylvania, took 2 days off and then went for it. So
wow. Were you hiking with a group up to that point?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so were you just like, see ya? Or did you take time off at the end for them to catch up again?
Well, we got to Pennsylvania at the same time.
Yeah.
So took 2 days off. So they got a head start.
Okay.
And then blew past them. And in Maryland, I took like 4 days to get through Maryland. So I was resting.
Maryland's like 40 miles.
Oh, it's like 36.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So I got done and was like, all right, resting time.
Yep.
Chill out. Couple miles here, shelter hopping.
Yep.
Letting myself rest. And then, took a 0 in Harper's Ferry and my crew caught up and hiked the rest of the trail with them. So
were those your biggest mile days on the Pennsylvania AT-FKT? Because that's like 56 miles a day. 50 miles a day?
Yeah. It was, every day was over 50. I think it averaged out to 55, but the last day I did a big push again. So it's like the last 26 hours was like 72 miles. And prior to that, it was like low 50s. Yeah. For the first 3 days.
And was that the longest days you'd had on a trail before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome to just go into the well and not quite know how much is there, but it's all fair.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it didn't occur to me that I hadn't done mileage that big before.
Yeah. And then to do it back to back.
Yeah. Well, I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
I knew I could do it. So I wasn't gonna, put myself down and be like, well, prove it that you can do it. Okay, well, that's what I was doing, I guess, proving that I could.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I could. And especially, having done the Sheltoe the year before, now I know what real sleep deprivation feels like.
Yep.
So I'm much more prepared when that comes. I know how my body responds to that and how to stay on track and stay in the game. So I knew I could do it faster, average daily mileage than the Sheltoe. I knew I'd do it faster. So, especially when, the elevation is minimal. It's mainly rocks.
Yeah.
And
you have less weight too, if it's
less weight. Yeah. I got to Delaware Water Gap and mailed forward a bunch of stuff to Maryland.
I like it.
And got a couple replacement items sent from home.
Yeah. And
did a changeover. And then, when I got to Maryland, just did the reverse changeover or whatever. So
it just feels so old school and cool to just be like, well, in the middle of this, I'm going to just throw in an FKT and then keep on hiking.
I think I have, but before we were recording, I was asking who else you had, had on the, who else you had talked to as part of this podcast. And I have such imposter syndrome with all of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in the same world that a lot of the, I'm not an ultra runner. I'm like a dirtbag thru hiker who just wings it and is able to do these things. And I think that if a lot of these other more dedicated athletes went for these FKTs, they could certainly get them. They really could. But there's a lot of these routes that don't have unsupported times.
Yeah.
Period. Or they're really weak unsupported times. It's there's very little unsupported competition once you get over the 200-mile range.
Well, whose overall FKT did you break on the AT through Pennsylvania?
About Heather Anderson.
Okay. So that's a pretty good name.
Yes, true. However, on the flip side of that, I'm in my mid-20s, prime physical condition.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit different. And also, I think I'm just guessing, I haven't asked Heather about this at all.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that was kind of a training run for her Washington unsupported effort, which was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just saying it can be a step, these are stepping stones. 55 miles a day for five-ish days is pretty stout for most records. And I think it is that thru-hiker style that when you get in that 200 plus mile range, it really trumps ultra runners who are so inefficient when there's things to take care of and problem solving. Like thru-hiking, you can solve problems on the go. You can tape up a cut on your finger while putting miles in. Yeah. That's so different than an ultra runner.
For sure. And I think a lot of it's almost like two different sports. There's a ton of overlap, but ultra runners, they like ultra running. Yeah. They don't want to do the unsupported. Like a lot of them, maybe physically, like if they trained for it, if they got some more experience, could do it. Like if they learned how to work on the go and have different gear set up or whatever, they could physically, they could do it, I think. But they don't want to because they're ultra runners. Just like I don't want to go after like a shorter, supported like whatever run. Yeah. I don't want to do that. Like to me, that doesn't sound, that's just not appealing to me. So I think, probably a lot of these people physically, they could probably do these FKTs. They don't want to. Yeah. And it would take a lot of training for them to get there, I think. As you were saying, like it's a different skill set.
But it is such a blurred line now.
It is. I mean, there's such a big gray area. I mean, and you do have like people who come from a thru-hiking background starting to be competitive in the ultra running sphere. Like there is that crossover. I think you would be probably one of those people.
Yeah.
In terms of like, I think thru-hiking, from what I understand, that was like the first thing that you
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
20 years old yet.
And there are definitely, people who make the reverse. And I mean, you look at people, like Carl Sabe doing a self-supported run of the PCT. Like he trained for that. He had done a self-supported previously. Like that is an incredibly impressive time that is made. It's made notable by Carl Sabe is not a thru-hiker. Yeah. Well, he is in that he did the PCT, but like in the traditional sense, he's got the ultra running background.
Yeah.
So there is some crossover, but all of these longer than 200 mile-ish, routes, like when you look at the impressive times, it's all people who came from thru-hiking background that are able to put these numbers up.
Yeah. And I think it's because however many days you're out there, there's like this chunk of time that call it an hour and a half, 2 hours, that thru-hikers bank and ultra runners waste, and it just adds up. And so if it's like a 1 day thing, if an ultra runner's moving faster, they can make up for that hour and a half. But if it's 4 days, like that's a quarter of a day that you've made up on an ultra runner. And I remember there was like a story about Scott Jurek on the AT record, and he took like an hour to get ready in the morning. Whereas I think you're laughing too, because I think our FKTs, the goal is like, sub 10 minutes and you're walking. Yeah. So I think like that's a slow morning. So I think it is this mindset thing too. And as you get, this was a shorter record too. You're getting closer to competitive with those ultra runners on those distances too.
Yeah. I think, just with my background, the longer the trail is, I think the more competitive I am. But then you get into like, I would not probably be as competitive on like something like the PCT, but unsupported, like this is a niche that there's not really any competition. Well, there is, but there's so many, like the Pinhoti is well known in the ultra runner sphere. The Pinhoti 100, like there's like solid times for self-supported and supported on that trail, and there is zero unsupported time. No one has even done it.
Wow.
Just to put up a time.
That's very similar to the Sheltoe.
Similar thing. Like you have all of these routes that are in this range that either have a like really soft time from, someone who could do it. So they went out and did it and they got the time.
Yeah.
Great for them. Or have no time at all. Or if they have a competitive time, it's really only been in the last couple of years that those have been really put up. Like the various sections of the PCT have competitive unsupported times that people are putting down, and
like the short sections of the whole state,
like Oregon, and Washington unsupported, and
I think you should go for California.
Oh, Jesus! To my knowledge, I was curious. I was like, I was looking on the website or whatever, and I think the longest ever unsupported is the Arizona Trail, which also in the last couple of years, absolutely insane, bonkers to me. But
70-something pound passion.
Jeez, like carrying multiple pairs of shoes the whole day. Absolutely.
He needs to find a more durable shoe. That's wasted wit.
Well, it sounded like, now I only ever listened to the FKT podcast. I don't know any more than what I heard on that podcast, but it sounded like he was same kind of situation, just a thru hiker who thought he could.
Yep.
So he got together what he had, and then he did it, and the fact that a lot of these records are being set by people with that mentality of, I'm just a thru hiker who thinks, maybe I could put down that time, so I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
Probably most of those times are going to get beat in the next, like, I'm just looking at the future of this category of FKTs. Like right now, a lot of soft times, a lot of non-existent times, a lot of competitive times that are only just now being put forward, and a lot of people who are just now being or focusing on this category. I think in the next, it wouldn't shock me if a lot of really competitive times start to get, they already are starting, but like it's only going to continue. And a lot of these times that at the time may have been like, oh, crazy, this guy did 300 miles unsupported. Are you kidding me? Like now, like that, we're going to start seeing so many more competitive times, I think.
Well, and I think that benefits the most from any gear advancements or even like weather models, stuff like that. If you know what you're dealing with for longer, you can take less. Like, since the John Muir Trail was 3 days, I knew exactly the weather, and I didn't take hardly any protection from the weather because I didn't need it. And it's not really what you should do, but as like longer trails have better windows and gear and stuff like that, I think that'll make it easier too.
Oh yeah, like people will optimize the hell out of it,
The more data, the more people will use it.
Exactly. And
have you gone for any other FKTs that didn't work out, or are you 2 for 2?
No, I'm 2 for 2 right now.
So what's the next one?
I don't know. I really don't. I go back and forth. Like, I definitely want to do, I'm not going to say I'm going to do a million of them, but one more I can say, and then when that one's done, I'll probably want to do another, but
probably the cool.
Take them one at a time. I don't know. I'm kind of, I probably wouldn't have thrown it out there if I was seriously considering it. You never know who's listening that might go put down a stout time on the trail.
Especially because it is like pinhoti season coming up.
Yeah. Well, he's listening. Go for it. I think I'd like to, like, I've done so much hiking out east, but like my heart is out west, and I think it would be cool to attempt, and the times are a lot more competitive on the western trails, and I think it'd be cool to attempt something in that setting.
Same distance, or
probably another longer unsupported something or other. But I don't have immediate plans to do that. It's just, that's what's in my mind to go for next. So, or to try, pushing myself and trying new things, not sticking with the same old.
So do you have plans or thoughts to close out the Triple Crown?
Absolutely.
Okay. So CDT coming
up.
And we know after you do a thru hike or a Triple Crown Trail, you go for an FKT.
Or during. Or during. I can't, there's not anything. I think on the CDT, I definitely wouldn't do something during. That needs to be its own adventure without throwing something else in. I think, honestly, on the AT, after like coming off the PCT, just yellow blaze syndrome, I was getting kind of bored. So I just needed to change it up a little bit. And MKT was a way to do that. I don't foresee that happening on the CDT as much. Just a little bit more dynamic.
It's like the best things in the country, and then 150 miles of meh, and then the next best thing, like Glacier, and then the Bob, and then it's pretty good, and then some road walking, and then Yeah, it's an interesting trail, but you got to close it out now.
Yeah. Well, I think the CDT, like even before I'd done any Triple Crown trails, that was probably the one that I really wanted to do the most. And I started with the PCT because I thought it was more achievable as a first trail, and also like kind of a toss up whether I wanted to do that one or the CDT anyway. So, and then the AT was just kind of last minute.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't the plan until like 2 months before.
I'd message you and you're like, oh, I ended up on the It's like, oh, cool.
So we'll see. I'm really excited for the CDT. I want to give it its own thing and not, if I don't end up doing an FKT with it, I think I'd be much more okay with that than on the AT.
Well, all the side chutes and trails.
Yeah.
Check out multiple things in Glacier, the Winds, Colorado. I think that's the way to do that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much to explore in these individual places that it's like bust your ass to get between them and then spend multiple days.
Do side trails and all. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm stoked. I think I'm going to make it happen as soon as I can. So if it can't be this year, then it's got to be next year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. Last topic, AT versus PCT. What do you like better? What's harder? What's the breakdown? Because everyone is so accessible.
People are so passionate. And I understand, because I can be passionate, so I can understand other people's passion. So I'm not going to say anything that's going to offend anybody. Or maybe I will. PCT is my pick.
Yeah.
I would do the PCT over and over and over and over and over again. I loved that trail. And the AT, I had a fantastic time. Wouldn't change anything about it and don't regret a second. However, I don't know that I'll ever do that one again. That's for a number of reasons. But they say everyone's going to pick their first trail, But that being said, I do know a lot of people who did the AT first and still say the PCT. So
yeah, the PCT just bang for buck. You don't have to work that hard.
No, yeah. It's just amazing the whole way and well taken care of, and
so many switchbacks.
Logistically pretty simple, like not compared to the AT, but compared to pretty much anything else, it's pretty straightforward. And
downsides are when you descend San Jacinto, you have 26 miles of switchbacks. It is so gradual, that trail, that it will frustrate you, but other than that, it's perfect.
But you get a view the whole way down.
The same view.
But it's a view.
It is, yes. Very true. The AT, you can work for 2 hours, get to the top, not a single view.
Yeah, if that were the AT, there would not be any switchbacks, straight up. And it would have been, in trees the whole time. Probably like a man-made, carved-out view, like 3/4 the way up, and that's probably what you'd get.
Yeah, it is different too. Even the marking techniques, like Blazing versus PCT, is just intuitive, sort of. Where's the rut in the ground? That's the PCT.
There you go.
Turn off it.
Go the most logical way. You're on the PCT.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks for making the time while I'm passing through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was super fun, and can't wait to see you hike yourself into shape for the next sentence. It's the coolest training style, because it's like, what is exactly like what I'm going to do? Hiking. Okay, I'll start hiking, and then I'll do my FKT.
Well, it's almost like, the training is the point, and the FKT is just like the bonus at the end.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not ready to have post-hike depression, so let me do one really hard hike, and then I will crave it.
I'm gonna go so hard that I injure myself so that I have to rest for a little bit.
That's exactly it. Thanks for listening to the Free Outside podcast. Once again, congratulations to Harry on his second 200-mile win of the year. And we will just be back on Monday. Thanks again for joining. 5-star reviews. You can watch all these on YouTube. Love you guys. Stay elite, my friends.